for me, educators should not prohibit the use of ChatGPT, but rather teach the students how to leverage this. Because ChatGPT, for those who are still clueless about ChatGPT, it's something like a platform that gets all the information from all the search engines, from all the websites. Just imagine all this information based on the prompt that you put in ChatGPT, put them in the blender, mix them together, and then the ChatGPT spits it out. So actually, you still need common sense to make out of what is being produced by ChatGPT. So it's not like I'm a student, I put a prompt in ChatGPT, then it gives me something, then that's the final product that I will provide to my professor. No, that's not the way it works.
Welcome and good day to Season 12, Episode 5 of Leader's Edge. Today we have an especially enthralling and engaging treat for you. We have the disruptive imperative. Our guest is Jennifer Nuya. And before I start, after the pandemic, yes, it was a period of disruption, but now we have new technology coming around. And maybe you are feeling the upheaval caused or that will be caused by our changing world. A world where robotics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and auto will automate entire industries and the jobs that come with them. A world where the need for human labor will be drastically reduced and new roles and responsibilities will form in their wake. It's time to start thinking about how to protect our people and communities from changes brought about by the rise of automation. In this episode, we'll focus on how we can transition to the future fearlessly and take advantage of the opportunities presented us by the revolution. That is why we've invited Jennifer Nuya. And before we get into the talk itself, the introduction was just engaging. I'd like to invite Jennifer to introduce herself. Jennifer?
Thank you, Paul. Good day, everyone. I'm happy to be here, and I'm so looking forward to providing value to our viewers. I'm Jennifer, and I'm based in the Philippines with 16 years of experience holding various leadership positions in the business process outsourcing and non-BPO industries, which include but not limited to retail, pharmaceuticals, publishing, and others. I have helped several multinational companies, matrix organizations create a positive work environment. And during the pandemic, I was one of the people affected by the COVID pandemic. I decided to pivot my life and create my own economy. And in one of my current roles, I harness the power of youth-centered design, gamification, in creating a diversity board game, which is similar to Trivial Pursuits or Monopoly. We hope that children around the world, young adults, adolescents, as they play the game, they will have conversations on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
That's fascinating, and maybe that's a good place to start. When you talk about board games, Trivial Pursuits, I'll admit those belong in my era. Okay, I'm a baby boomer. They're very popular when I was a kid, and I still remember enjoying them. But now a lot of it has shifted to literally, online gaming. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but in what ways are they different? Or, for example, let's say I'm playing, let's say, Dungeons and Dragons, okay, compared to, let's say, playing something like Trivial Pursuit or Monopoly. In what way is it different?
I'm glad that you asked. So for our game, our goal was really to create first a physical board game because unfortunately, as we know, even if we are moving towards the fourth industrial revolution, there are still some places, even in the Philippines, right, where there is low connectivity or no internet. So we hope that this will be made available to those children. However, because of the strict and the long lockdown that was declared by then President Rodrigo Duterte, we were not allowed to gather in large groups. So we then decided, let's make a digital version first of the game. And the game is already, at least the beta version is already available on Tabletopia. And we have other people who are helping us to move it to Unity. We also did some market research, experimentation. We did some demos, and as far as the demos were concerned, all of them are positive. So we had some demos with schools, also with organizations, at least in the US, in Africa, and in Canada. Now,
Excellent.
what makes it different? I also myself did some or played some role-playing games when I was much younger, and I realized that they could be very addictive. And I believe that that is the main purpose of these video games, so that they will be able to catch the attention of the players, right? There was a time I realized that it wasn't really good for me. In one night, I did not sleep at all because I wanted to level up, yes, from level 1 to level 30. And then I said to myself, this is not very good. I was already working back then. So I thought to myself, if this is what's happening to me now, what more will the effect be on the youth? So for our game, we want it not to be addictive, but rather educational. So this will be a supplement, or it can be a springboard to discuss diversity, equity, inclusion in the schools, in workplaces, or even in youth organizations.
That's actually quite fascinating how you've designed it to not really be addictive. Okay. Uh, with that said, though, I'm a little curious because when you say it's not addictive, I'm beginning to think that there might be other support programs that go with it to complete the experience, if you want to say. Is that correct? And typically, what support programs would there be?
Well, we're still in the beta version,
Mhm.
but in the version that we have a board game, whereas the players traverse around the infinity board. They have playing pieces, and when they land on the space corresponding to the color, there is a color coded cards. So each card they will pick up, and there are some questions there, or there can be some information. For example, synesthesia. What is synesthesia? Not very many people know what synesthesia is, but this is a condition wherein a person has his or several of his senses intertwined. So some people, when they see color, or when they hear a sound, they see a color corresponding to the sound.
Yes, I've heard of that, and that I thought that was actually an advantage. Okay,
Yes, you could
because
say that.
for me, when I said, "Wow, if I heard a sound, I could see a color," that would really make my day very, very interesting. If you want to say, well, so let's stay a little bit on this gaming and let's connect it to some of the
Mm,
situations that we're facing.
mm,
When you said when I introduced it and I had the opening statement, you
mm.
started by saying thinking about how to protect our people and communities. Now, protect them from what?
Protect them. Are we still on the game, or are we still
We
not?
could we
Or
could we could use the game as an example of how to protect.
mm,
Okay, but what are we protecting them from?
well, we're protecting them from being addicted to the games, because I know some children, they become so addicted that they no longer want to study. And these are unrealized potential. I know some children that they could have graduated with honors in their classes, but because they spend days not uh not even eating, not even sleeping, so they are not, that's unrealized potential that could have been used to better their families, to better the society.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, uh, the disruption that will happen, I'm sure, because of the way just things are going. They
Mm,
had Chat GPT, now they have a newer version, which is even better. Okay. And when you first look at the first one, so, oh, we got a new one. Uh, because of all of this, yes, we have to protect against being addictive, the addictive behavior of some games. But in
mm,
terms of the disruption that's going to happen, though, I mean, the job scenery will change.
mm.
And of course, new technology will keep on coming in. In what way will the game, or maybe you have other thoughts as to how can we protect ourselves from all of this?
Well, you mentioned ChatGPT earlier. I had a chat with a dear friend of mine, and she is currently teaching in a high school here in the Philippines. And we were talking about ChatGPT. And I shared with her my perspective. From my perspective, teachers or educators should not be afraid or should not prohibit the students from using chat GPT because there's no way that we can stem the use of chat GPT. Everything will be AI enabled, whether we want it or not. And actually, we should welcome the use of AI capabilities in our home, in our education, in our society, because it makes our work easier. But we can learn ways on how to leverage it and not being dependent on it. Because the funny thing is, there are some instances, I saw it on the newsfeed on my social media channels. By the way, my daughter, she's incoming grade 9, and she also knows ChatGPT. I discuss these things with her because, again, this is the world that others like her are growing into. So they need to learn how to work with these things. So she doesn't use ChatGPT in her work, but for me, educators should not prohibit the use of ChatGPT, but rather teach the students how to leverage this. Because ChatGPT, for those who are still clueless about ChatGPT, it's something like a platform that gets all the information from all the search engines, from all the websites. Just imagine all this information based on the prompt that you put in ChatGPT, put them in the blender, mix them together, and then the chat GPT spits it out. So actually, you still need common sense to make out of what is being produced by chat GPT. So it's not like I'm a student, I put a prompt in chat GPT, then it gives me something, then that's the final product that I will provide to my professor. No, that's not the way it works. So you can use ChatGPT to make your life easier. So for example, for those who are into illustration, who are artists, I watched a YouTube video of manga artists in Japan, and they have learned to live with ChatGPT. So some people, they were afraid that they would lose jobs, but these manga artists, they use ChatGPT so that they don't need to create anime from scratch. So that cuts down the time that they need to work on the artwork. And what they do is just make some modifications based on what they imagine or what they envision. So that's what I believe how we can leverage on ChatGPT and other AI technologies available to us.
And going back to the example you had about the manga, how about the guy who actually creates manga without ChatGPT? Isn't that going to disrupt his work?
Yes, it's disrupting his work because it's making his work easier for him. He just needs to make some modifications. He doesn't need to make an artwork, a
Hmm.
manga from scratch.
Right, right. Okay. Okay, that's an excellent point. There is another question though that did come up when you say the teacher will have to teach the children how to use ChatGPT, but a lot of questions will arise regarding ethics. Okay, and
Mm,
I said, you look at it and you say, yes. you don't use it for homework, agreed, but it doesn't mean that they won't use it for something else. Okay, that maybe is not exactly ethical. And I don't know, but for me, although I haven't been to school in a long, 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 long time, I don't know if ethics is being taught today. I learned it. I had to read
Mm,
Nicomachean Ethics, Socratic Method of Thinking. I didn't find them exciting classes. I took
mm.
philosophy, but it helps me today to understand, this is the right thing to do. And I don't know if those classes exist today in school. And
I believe at the
yes,
university
yeah,
level.
correct. But you're right. Is it? Or is it only for certain courses that they offer philosophy? Because admittedly, I was lucky. Uh, I went to an American school system and I learned philosophy within K-12.
Mm,
I learned it in my 12th grade before I even entered university.
mm.
Okay, so it was a Catholic school, so there are a lot of religious classes, if you want to say. But I was lucky in that sense. But today I'm not seeing it. Okay, a lot of even pre Chat GPT and AI, the way social media was used, there's a lot of ethical issues going on. Okay, and how will the teacher work with that? I know they're a kid. I do understand that, but that's also the age when you start teaching a person to understand the difference between what his rights are and what is the right thing to do. Okay, and how will the teacher work with that?
That's a good thing that you pointed out. We should have more regulation as to the use of AI. Unfortunately, there is, as far as my research goes, we still don't have one regulating body about AI, right? But and the scary thing is, again, we started with chat GPT, and now we have just yesterday I saw that chat GPT 4 already
Yes.
dropped, right? So AI is amazingly fast in its development, and we cannot wait. Sometimes regulation and other the framework for regulation takes some time, and we cannot wait for months or years before we can implement that. But for me, from my own objective estimation, it's more of common sense. Again, we have to be able to teach children about research skills, to be able to attribute where they got this information from. So even I, when I do my research, I even at this time, I also do attribution to make sure that I give due credit where credit is due.
Mhm. Actually, so that's an interesting point because personally, I think we're finding ourselves in a catch-22 situation with that
Mm,
because Chat GPT and AI in general, even more, how would you say, more simple forms of technology are
mm,
actually reducing our capacity to think correctly. Okay, in my era, I had to remember a phone number, I had to remember an address. Even just that simple task was already something that my brain used to allow me to think better. That
mm,
was that was taken away. Now, even something that I can simply do myself, I would still ask Siri, "Hey Siri, where's this?" When I can do it myself. Okay, that's one issue. Two is there's just too much information now that our brains are generally speaking lazy, and that
mm,
our attention span have gone from I think 5 minutes to 20 seconds. Okay, so you are right. We do need to teach them to research correctly, reason correctly, but oftentimes there's just it just they don't have enough attention span to do it, and that was driven, I think, by technology. ChatGPT comes along and it'll just make it
mm,
worse. Okay. So in my thinking, yes, I'm all with this, but we're facing a really disrupting position
mm,
because if you look at all the jobs that Chat GPT and the other AIs that I'm sure are coming can easily, take care of.
Mm-hmm.
what will that do to us? Where will that put us? And
Mm-hmm.
admittedly, unfortunately, a lot of the jobs are the jobs that today our BPO and call centers are doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I hear you, Paul, and I feel that's the beauty of it because for me, our brain is not supposed to be a repository of information, but rather it's a thinking machine. So for me, the gone are the days when, of course, memorization is important, but more and more, there will be more evaluation, higher order thinking skills, evaluation, synthesis, and also ultimately creation. Now we have children, school age 6 to 9 years old, they are already starting how to code. And then we have 16-year-olds in Singapore. They are already learning how to manage the wealth portfolio of millionaires. So we will be seeing perhaps a different kind of learners now.
When you say different kind of learners, in what way would they be different?
Well, people who are, again, leveraging this AI, they don't need to do something from scratch, but rather working together with technology. So, for example, now we will have uh, we will have education by demand, and you said that we have a lot of information. So people will now be more intentional into what kind of information that they pay attention to.
Hmm. Okay. Uh, I'd really personally, I'd really like to see that happen. Okay. And maybe you can already hear my next question coming because the recent events with
Mm,
what happened with the trolling and everything, it shows me otherwise. Okay, that people will just read with something simple and they'll just believe it. Why? Because their brain is not it gets lazy and doesn't want to process information anymore. Why? Oh, because ChatGPT will do it for me. Okay, and now I'm not saying that that ChatGPT will make things worse. Okay,
mm,
but based on what I saw happen in the last few years of the trolling and everything, ChatGPT definitely has a potential to make it catastrophic.
mm,
Okay. So, and it's good that we're starting with children, which is what I really, really like about what you're doing. Okay, because that's where you start. Uh, maybe what I'm looking forward to is the games that you're creating will promote that kind of, let's say, force them to think rather than just, hey, Siri, where's my answer? ChatGPT, give me an answer. And it will force them to think things through because it'll
mm,
keep their brain in that level, if you want to say that the brain wants to process the information rather than just look for a quick and easy answer. So I'm definitely with you there. It's just that I'm a little worried because of what happened in the past
or
years
maybe,
with the
Paul,
troll and everything.
we will have a new course about information management, teaching children how to evaluate what is propaganda, what is fake news from what is real.
I certainly hope that course is there. Okay. It might seem strange, but it's after what happened again with the trolling and how the internet kind of uh the way they put it in a nice way, where they said they
Mm,
democratized information,
mm,
which or democratize your voice, which for me says that if I'm one crazy guy who believes the earth is flat, now I
mm,
can make myself sound like a million guys who believe the earth is flat, and I can convince other people to do so. And so, yes, it democratized that, but it can also be used in a completely incorrect way,
mm,
if you want to say. And and unfortunately, when you look at the people who believe the earth is flat, is they really do. You
mm,
can't convince them otherwise. Okay, so that's why the whole thing about ethics,
mm,
okay, the whole thing about you know being able to identify fact from fiction, as simple
mm,
as that. Maybe you call it common sense, but unfortunately, the singular fact that you use the word common sense is telling me that it's not as common as we want it to be.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Unfortunately.
unfortunately. So, but yeah, this is really really interesting. Can you tell me more about maybe what future things you plan to do? So you talked about the board games,
Mhm.
and you're in the beta stage, which is great. What else? So what else do you have in the future plans or maybe you want to do?
Yes, so in one of my current roles also, I am a project manager of the World System Solutions.
Hmm?
World System Solutions is a nonprofit organization in California, USA. We are building a social movement engine that will dissolve obstacles towards global evolution. And we hope to move the needle in climate action and environmental sustainability. Research shows that if we continue with the way we live, we would need 5 to 7 Earths to sustain us. So I'm still a millennial, okay, hanging by a thread. So this is not to blame anybody, but I feel that what is happening right now, the after effects of not taking care of the environment was not created by my generation, all right? Or it's just a cumulative carelessness of many people from different generations. But right now we cannot turn a blind eye, so we have to do something because I have some years to go, and I have nieces and nephews. Of course, you also have your loved ones, right? So we want them to inherit an earth that is, in a way, better than I found them. So that's what we're doing in World System Solutions.
Oh, that's nice. Please keep me informed of that because I find that interesting myself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I come from the corporate world, and for me, it's really an uphill battle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in fact, sometimes I feel like it's pointless.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, simply because if you look at the way corporations operate, they'll make the profit first, and then they'll do the Save the Earth movement. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They won't make Save the Earth the way to profit. They'll make the money first. Hey, let's do save. That's pretty much how they operate.
Mm-hmm.
And I was having a conversation with somebody on LinkedIn, and I said, I hope it doesn't reach the point where we have to grab our pitchforks and torches. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause we don't want to see that either. All
No,
right.
no.
So what you're doing with what was it again?
Yes, that's the World System
The
Solutions.
world system solutions is something that it's not only me. There's a general sentiment that I'm also picking up on with my contacts in LinkedIn that they can already see it'll be a disaster, and we have to change the way we're thinking. And
Yes.
maybe the only thing I'd like to change, and we're not talking about an evolution. We're talking about a revolution.
Mm,
Okay, this isn't 1.8. This is going to be like 3. Okay,
mm,
it has to be completely different. And okay, so you have that. That's also very, very fascinating. And I'm glad you brought it up. And
mm,
I don't know if this is the first time it's being aired here on Leaders Edge, but it's a way of thinking that, it's how would you say? Because corporations always, I need more. I want
mm,
better. I want faster. I want more. That has a limit.
mm, mm,
And I think we're reaching it somehow, somewhere. And okay. So let's continue with our. I hope I haven't distracted you with anything, or maybe I said something that would elicit a response from you.
mm. Well, that reminds me of an old American Indian quotation wherein if the last tree is cut and the last fish has been caught, then we will know that money is not all there is. Well, I'm just paraphrasing, right? Because
Right.
it's, again, you mentioned about greed. I believe that the earth can sustain everyone's need, but not everyone's greed.
Absolutely. In fact, a lot of people have asked me, is it overpopulation the problem? I said, I don't think so. I think it's
No.
overconsumption.
Mm,
I said, you've got people consuming way too much.
mm,
Okay. So,
Yes,
when you talk about that, especially that quote from the Indian philosophy, uh, it because it tells me also that one, uh, this kind of thinking is actually ancient.
ancient.
In your research, how far back does it go, and what have you discovered about this kind of?
Oh, that one. Oh, I don't think that we still have a pure-blooded American Indian nowadays, right? But so that's very, very old. And that's fascinating because when we think of the American Indians, sometimes we think they are backward because they don't have the technologies that we have right now. But I think they are more learned compared
Mhm.
to us because early on they already realized that we need to take care of the environment, because if we take care of the environment will take care of us in return.
Absolutely. I was having a quick conversation again, and I said, for me, the term human resources is indicative because humans are not resources.
No,
You don't own them. Okay.
no.
And they're not there to be exploited. So I said, maybe I should change it to human sources or something. It doesn't ring right. Okay.
Well, some
I
companies they call it human capital, not human resources.
Yeah, but capital is still for me, that makes it even just more. Hey, it's money. In my thinking. But well, there has to be a fundamental shift in the way we see things.
Mm,
And I don't know if you know the movement of, gosh, I forgot his first name, Mr. Melotto. Uh he put up Human Nature, local
mm-hmm.
company, you know them.
Yes.
And he said something very fascinating. And his story is he came from a dirt poor family, but he married into a rich family. Okay, and he said something very significant. He said, it's the rich who have to change the way they're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about it. You're probably right because they own everything anyway. But that maybe it will happen. We don't know, and maybe your initiative will at least help at least the upcoming generations be a little more conscious
Mm-hmm.
of maybe their environment, if you want to say, or
Mm-hmm.
the importance. Is
Mm-hmm.
that included in your games? You talked about DEI, which is something that's important. But in terms of seeing the environment as a source, not a resource.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is that included in your games or?
Yes, that's included.
Oh, okay. Can you run us through at least maybe one little exercise that we might run into if we were playing the game as a kid? Yay.
So for example, when you as you play the game, there, as I've mentioned, there are color coded
Mhm.
cards. So one part in the environment, as far as I can remember, is how can you take care of the environment. So that's one. And then number two is there are also some, shall we say, projects, action projects,
Mhm.
where you can organize a cleanup in your locality,
Oh, okay.
encourage your peers, children your age, to do a local cleanup.
Okay, that's nice.
Yes.
Have you heard of the suggestion? I found that a nice one, where at grade school they already teach it like they tell a child to plant a tree and you have to take care of it. Okay,
It's beautiful.
so you watch it grow as you age because a tree will take maybe 20 years to grow. At least I know a coconut tree takes about that long to reach maturity, if you want to say. So at least you could say, hey, look, so,
Yes,
you have
and
to
you
take care
name
of
it
it.
after yourself, right?
Yeah, you can. You can name it after yourself, exactly. But that's what I appreciate most about what you're doing is, uh, unfortunately, I think we'll need this sooner than later
Mm,
with the way things are moving.
mm,
Uh, Regulation, it's even in more advanced countries,
mm,
we're talking about things that are going to happen 5 years from now, and we have no idea what's going to happen. So it's
mm.
difficult for us to regulate something that we have no idea what's going to happen. Okay, you know, say, okay, let's do this, and then and one of the early days of ChatGPT, one of these futurist people were saying, we never thought we would have this conversation 5 years ago. I
Mm.
said, that simple statement tells me how are you going to regulate something like that?
But we have to start somewhere, even if we don't know the end, right? For example,
Absolutely.
what happens if there are no regulators? Just look at what happened to some cryptocurrencies because they had no regulators.
Well, yeah, agreed. That was again, just as a little side note about the whole Silicon Valley Bank, and now
Yeah.
UBS apparently bought Credit Suisse, which means Credit
Mm,
Suisse was also in trouble.
mm,
Okay, so but the question was, they talked about how the whole thing collapsed, and I said, I just wrote back, when will we ever learn? Come on, this has been happening since the tulips in Holland.
mm.
I said, we're just going around in circles here. I go.
When
So,
will we ever learn? Maybe because it's the same people? I'm not so sure.
uh, I I don't want to say it's the same people, so to speak. Maybe it's the same class of people.
Yes, yes.
Okay, that are there. Okay, and again, I don't want to make this a class issue, if you want to say, and it shouldn't be. Uh, but we're reaching a point where, if our country gets hit badly by all this artificial technology coming
Mm,
in, artificial
mm,
intelligence, I'm sorry, and it just take away, huge chunks of people
mm,
from jobs that were paying them pretty well. Okay, that'll be pretty bad. Okay,
mm,
that'll be quite difficult to deal with.
mm,
And your initiative speaks to that in a way. I
mm.
just wish that, maybe you could rush it through and maybe have the kids grow up faster or something, so that at least they'll be, you know, ready to face the future, if you want to say, with all the disruption going on.
Mm,
But yes, you are right. This will definitely be a spicy disruption.
mm.
Okay. And maybe to label you as a spicy disruptor is actually a pretty good label, and it's definitely, tell me more kind of deal. I'm a spicy disruptor. Oh, sure, tell me more. But this is really fascinating. Now, can you tell me? I know it's difficult to look into the future and predict into the future, but what would you say is your ideal vision of what the future would be with technology and everything there with us?
Mm. Well, I would love to think that the future is inclusive, where all voices is considered as one vote, where no one voice will take precedence over others. I'm unsure if you have heard about the Twitter files. I've watched the US Senate inquiry, wherein one US senator was grilling former Twitter employees and asked them, if you did not have certification, or you were not into medical field, you did not have any background in allied health sciences, what made you think that you were qualified to blacklist certified doctors who did not support the common narrative? So I would like to imagine a world where we have diverse voices, no, where no one voice is marginalized. So right now, I not scared, but more cautious sometimes when I have to express myself, because we have what we call cancel culture, where people, as you've said earlier, they control you, they can do nasty things about you without even knowing you personally, just because they felt offended by what you said.
I'm offended.
It seems that at this age, anybody can be offended by just anything.
What's funny about that, about being offended and all. Uh, for me, I'm sure you understand the concept of psychological safety and emotional safety.
Mm, mm,
Unfortunately, that taken to an extreme will not teach you how to handle rude people. It
mm,
won't. Okay. Instead, it'll kick the rude person out. But when in reality, you have to deal with rude people, period. Okay.
mm,
They'll be there, right? So,
mm,
but this is how would you say? Predicting the future is great. It's
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
For me, we have to make a huge leap.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say a huge leap, we have to reach, and I don't want to sound a little like I'm talking like Star Trek a little too much,
Mm-hmm.
because we have to reach, let's take, for example, compassion and kindness,
Mm-hmm.
something I think we should all share. But then if you look at compassion and kindness, it's always relative to suffering. In short, suffering has to be there in order for compassion and kindness to exist. Uh, what I'm hoping is that all the technology can get rid of the suffering, but somehow maintain the compassion and kindness. Okay. So it's a little difficult to I mean, even I myself am trying to wrap my head around it, if you want to say, because I've always understood compassion and kindness relative to suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you can only express it if somebody's suffering, right? If there's
Mm-hmm.
nobody suffering, what are you supposed to do? So maybe your efforts are definitely a step in the right direction. And I have to applaud you for it, simply because you're doing something about it.
Thank you so much, Paul.
And I do want to keep in touch because I feel like I have to do something about it as well, but I have no
Mm-hmm.
idea where to start. Okay. So maybe you can point me in that direction. That said, maybe you'd like to invite some of our viewers to maybe join you in your efforts, in your crusade, if you want to say. Is there anything you want to share with us?
Yes, that would be wonderful. So we are encouraging our viewers to come support us at World System Solutions. We are creating a social movement engine. So we imagine an Internet of Things. Imagine Google Suite plus Microsoft Office. Imagine also all the social media channels, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube and others, and all educational platforms, Udemy, Coursera, disaster response, everything feeding into this one engine. So when I said earlier, I want or I imagine the future to be inclusive and diverse, imagine this one big platform, universal internet, just to simplify it, where all the voices are fed into it. Again, there is no one voice that takes precedence over another, and that will serve as the mirror of humanity. So as humanity, we can see whether what we put into that engine is positive or negative, and as a humanity decide together, what can we do? Do we want where we are going, or do we want to create solutions that will make our world a more positive one?
Thank you. And you're actually giving me a little bit, much more hope, if you
Mm,
want to say. And I'm generally a positive kind of person. Just that I don't know where to start with this whole thing going on. Okay. But I really have to point out that maybe it's a circle of life, if you want to say, because many ancient philosophies, they're not
mm,
Western, they're more Eastern or even
mm,
African, if you want to say. And
mm,
I'm going to quote an African term, which
mm.
is maybe a quote that they use, but it's a very expressive what I feel you're trying to achieve. Uh, it's actually in African, it's called Ubuntu, which actually translates to I am because we are. Okay, it's a very powerful thought that yes, I'm a person, but I'm also everyone at the same time. Okay.
That's beautiful because, Paul, that's the name of our diversity board game, Ubuntu.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Okay.
Yeah, so Ubuntu is a software company, and we got the permission to use their name in the game.
Very nice. Very nice. And it has to really backtrack on a lot of the individualization that has sprung up, that has maybe reached an extreme.
Mm,
Okay, that it's literally all of us. It's not
mm,
just. And just as a fascinating point, I was reading an article about quantum physics, which I don't understand anything about, but
mm.
what was fascinating was the scientists apparently have already proven that there is no past, there's no present, there's no future. It's just the present, and everything is happening at the same time. So everything is true at the same time. So I said,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
All right. But thank you so much, Jennifer. It was a truly engaging afternoon. I myself was, whoa, I like a lot of things that I heard,
Mm,
and I actually got myself a little more interested in this whole thing and figuring out a way to help.
mm,
To our viewers, I hope you enjoyed this. If you enjoyed today, please subscribe, like, share. Our next episode is with Miss Ruby Palma, is it? Yes, that'll be episode 6. We're talking about coaching teams towards higher performance. And like always, learning is a never ending journey with limitless vistas.